Namaste everyone, my name is Surendra Kerala. I am science teacher at secondary level. I am going to discuss about the chemical reactions for class 10 and unit 15. Unit 15 chemical reaction. As you know, we can see various kinds of chemical reactions that take places in our daily lives. Where there, the new compounds is formed while we are mixing two or more than two substances. Or when the chemical reactants are exchanging through the replacement, through the decomposition, through neutralization, and through the exchanging of their atoms through directly. They forms the new substances to everywhere. These new substances are formed by the chemical reactions. So the chemical reaction is the process in which one or more reactants undergo the transformations to form the different substances by exchanging of their atoms or molecules through the combinations, by the process of replacement, decomposition, neutralization, and combination. And they finally produce the new substances. These new substances is known as the product. So, as you know, chemical reactions is the process in which the reactants are undergoes to transformation into the different kinds of substances through the combination, replacement, neutralizations, and decomposition to produce the new things is known as the Western chemical reactions. And during the chemical reactions, the bond between the atoms and reactants are breaking, and sometimes the bonds may be creating structures. So, as you know, bond is the binding force of attractions between the atoms, group of atom molecules, and the compound, which are binding for the stability of the complex substances. So, all kinds of complex matters are formed through these chemical reactions. That may be process of the combination, that may be formed due to the combinations process, and that may be formed due to the replacements of the atoms to each other, and that may be neutralizations, neutralize to each other's their character to form the new compound to each other. This process, the chemical reactions, may be pursued and produce the new product from it. And then, as you know, each and every chemical reaction that have two major parts. First one is the reactant, and second one is the product. Reactants means the each and every chemical reactions that has right hand side. These compounds, group of atoms, molecules, elements, and atoms, these are undergoes to take part in the chemical reactions to form the new compound. These undergoes to take part in the chemical reaction. They are called the reactant, and reactants are generally written within the left hand side of the chemical reaction. And the product is the newly formed substances by the exchanging of their reactants. As well, reactants may be molecules, may be groups of atoms, may be ions, may be radicals, and that may be elements too. And they are generally exchanging through the process of combine, decompose, neutralize, and displacement. They are called product. In the chemical reactions, products are normally written within the right side of the chemical reactions. In the above reactions, we can see and we can thanks to that A plus B act as the reactants and C act as the product. And then the reactants and product are always separated by their weight to each others. So reactants is normally written within the left hand side of the chemical reaction, and product are generally written within the right hand side of the reaction. And next thing, have you ever imagined in your mind, and especially for class 10, sometimes make questions asked in your examinations, what are reversible reaction and what are irreversible chemical reactions. As you know, you have to remain in your mind, reversible chemical reactions mean those type of chemical reactions they are reverse to each other, or they can reversing their chemical reactions to each other. That may be changed into the reactants after the chemical sense, and that may be changed into the products after the chemical sense. They can reverse to each other. Like that, in the screen you can see here, A plus B can change into the G plus D, and C plus D can reverse to change into the what's that? Reactants A plus B. If they can reverse to change from product to reactants or from reactants to product, these kinds of chemical reactions are known as the reversible reaction. An irreversible reaction means some of them's reactions are reversible and some of them are irreversible are there in the nature. That means irreversible reactions, those kinds of reactions, they can't change from reactants to product and product to reactants after the chemical change. So these kinds of reactions are known as the irreversible reaction. For example, let us consider A plus B act as the reactants and C act as the product. They never exchange from product to reactants and reactants to the product from to each other or vice versa. They never turns and they never becomes change their initial positions as well as initial matter from product to reactants and reactants to product. That's why such kinds of reactions are called the irreversible chemical reactions. And the type of chemical reactions, especially we consider the generally two aspects. And the normally the chemical reactions are four types are there. Four types of chemical reactions are there in the natures, and there are many complex substances there are in the natures which are formed by the exchanging of their atoms, groups of atoms, molecule for their stability, and they generally replace, neutralize, decompose, and combine in their atoms to each other. And normally there are four kinds of chemical reactions are there in the nature. First one, combinations chemical reaction, decomposition chemical reaction, displacement chemical reaction, and the acid-base reaction. There are normally four types of chemical reactions are there in the natures. But in the aspect of heat, absorbing and releasing the amounts of heat during the chemical reaction, or on the basis of heat, there are two types of chemical reactions are there in the natures: exothermic chemical reaction and endothermic chemical reaction. That means you can see exothermic stands for that the type of chemical reactions which release the amounts of heat during the chemical reaction. That means they release the certain amounts of heat during the chemical reactions. An endothermic chemical reaction is those type of chemical reaction which absorbs or that requires the certain amounts of heat during the chemical reaction. These type of chemical reactions are known as the endothermic chemical reactions. And as you know, combinations reactions is known as the addition, synthesis, as well as fusion reactions. And decompositions chemical reactions, also known as the analysis as well as fission chemical reactions. And displacement reactions is known as the replacement reaction. There are generally two types of chemical reactions take places in the chemical reaction. First one is the single displacement, and second one is the double displacement reaction, and third one is the acid-base reaction. And acid-base reactions is also known as the neutralization reaction because they generally take places in between the acid and base, and the acidic character of acid and basic character of base are neutralized to each other to form the neutral substances. Especially they produce the salt and water forms to each other. That's why that chemical reactions is known as the neutralization chemical reaction. First one, combinations chemical reactions. Combinations chemical reactions is the first type of chemical reactions in which a single compound is formed due to the direct combinations of two or more than two reactants. Such chemical reactions is known as the combinations reaction. It is also known as the additions chemical reaction. That may be also known as the synthesis chemical reactions, or that is also known as the fusions chemical reactions too, because especially in the combinations chemical reaction there are two or more than two reactants are added to each other, or they are fusions to each other, they are combines to each other to form the single product. So they are called additions, synthesis, or fusions chemical reactions too. For example, we can see in the screen A plus V act as the reactants and AB known as the product in the chemical reactions. As you know, there are many types of chemical reactions are there in the screen. First one, sodium plus chlorine to gives the sodium chloride. That means sodium and chlorine are combining to form the sodium chloride. That means sodium and chlorine act as the reactant and sodium chloride act as the product. And sodium and chlorine are undergoes to take part in the chemical reaction, or undergoes to combine to each other to forms the single product sodium chloride. That's why these are the flying examples of chemical combinations chemical reactions. And second, carbon plus oxygen combines to form the carbon dioxide. Magnesium plus oxygen to gives the magnesium oxide. Sorry, there is a mistake. MgO2, MgO that may be wrong. There is mistake to written. And nitrogen plus hydrogen to gives the ammonia. Magnesium oxide plus water to gives the magnesium hydroxide. Aluminum plus oxygen to gives the aluminum oxide are given there. These are the examples of combinations chemical reactions. And then after, decompositions chemical reaction. Decomposition chemical reactions means those kinds of reactions in which single complex compounds or substances are decomposed into two or more than two simple products. They are called decomposition chemical reaction. They are also known as the splitting, fissions, dissociate, or they are also known as the analysis chemical reaction. Generally, complex compounds is decomposed into the two or more than two simpler products, as well as a simple product and simple compounds are formed together. That's why decomposed means the splittings of complex matter into the simpler form of matter. They are generally proceedings by the applications of light, heat, and electricity. For example, you can see on the right hand side of the screen, A plus B act as the reactants, and A and B are separating from each other due to the heat. Similarly, calcium carbonate is decomposed into the calcium oxide and calcium dioxide by the heat. Sodium carbonate is also decomposed into the sodium oxide and carbon dioxide. These are decomposed by the usings of heat. Similarly, we can see within the right hand side of the screen, calcium carbonate is decomposed into the calcium oxide and carbon dioxide. Sodium hydroxide is decomposed into the sodium oxide and water, and carbonic acid is decomposed in carbon dioxide and water. Potassium chloride is decomposed due to the heat into the potassium chloride and oxygen, and zinc carbonate is decomposed into the zinc oxide and carbon dioxide that we have seen in the screen. These are the examples of decomposition chemical reactions. And then three displacement chemical reactions. As you know, displacement means one of them atoms and group of atoms are displaced to the another atom and group of the reactants to form the new compound. The type of chemical reaction in which an atom or group of atom in the molecules is replaced by another atom or group of atom is called the displacement reaction. Displacement reactions are also known as the substitutions as well as replacement chemical reactions. There are two types of displacement chemical reaction: single displacement chemical reaction and the double displacement chemical reaction. As we know, we can see on the right hand side of the screen A, B and C. A, B and C act as the reactants in the chemical reaction, and they are displaced A, B, where B is displaced through C, and then the BC matters as well as compounds is formed to there, and A is separated from the reactants B. That's why, as you know, that is the examples of displacement chemical reaction, and some of them the examples of displacement reactions are there in the screen. Copper sulfate plus iron to give the ferrous sulfate plus copper, silver nitrate plus copper to give the copper nitrate and silver, and like these other chemical reactions are there in the screen. These are the examples of displacement chemical reactions. And what are the differences between single and double displacement chemical reactions are there? First one, single displacement chemical reaction, the type of chemical reactions in which an atom's group of atom or element in the molecules is replaced by the another atom or molecules to form the product is called single displacement. For example, zinc is reacting with sulfuric acid to give the zinc sulfate and hydrogen. Zinc is reacting with hydrochloric acid to give the zinc chloride and hydrogen. Copper is reacting with silver nitrate to give silver and copper nitrates. These are the examples of single displacement chemical reaction. A single displacement reactions occurs when or more elements replace on another elements in the compound. For example, A and BC compounds are undergoes two reactions to each other when the B is displaced by A. So AC compounds is formed to there and B is displaced from the A. Similarly, potassium and sodium chloride could to give potassium chloride, and sodium is displaced from the potassium, and chlorine is reacting with sodium bromide, and then the chlorine displaces the bromine and sodium chloride is formed to there and bromine. Similarly, double displacement reactions means that those type of chemical reactions which mutually exchange their atoms, group of atoms, elements and the molecules is replaced by two atoms and the molecules from the product. They are called double displacement chemical reaction. Like that, sodium hydroxide is reacting with hydrochloric acid to give the sodium chloride and water. That means there is exchanging their ion as well as radicals to each other. There is double displacements of their atoms and group of atoms in the chemical reactions. So they are the examples of double displacement reaction. In the end of the screen, we can see A plus B plus C plus D. They are the reactants which undergoes to change C plus B and A plus D. And there, AC are the cations, they are known as the positive ion, and BD are the anions, they are the negative ion. A displaces C and B displaced by D. So C and B compounds is formed and A and D compounds is formed. In this way, the double displacement chemical reactions are take places like this. Doubly displacements of their atoms, group of atoms, molecule forms to each others. Acid-base or neutralization chemical reactions. As we know, acid-base reactions are known as the neutralization chemical reaction because they neutralize their acidic and basic character to each other to form the neutral substances. They are salt and water. And the type of chemical reactions in which acid base are reacting with each other to give the salt and water. By neutralize their character to each other are called the neutralization reaction. And normally, neutralization reactions can be utilized in our daily life, especially if we have the hyperacidity increase within our stomach, then we consume the basic content medicine. That means basic content medicine neutralize the acidity of stomach, and then we becomes to feel good. Similarly, we mix the different solutions of cements during the construction work. At that time, we can also utilizing these kinds of neutralization reactions to there. So any other way in our life, we can utilize the neutralization reactions to everywhere. An acidic character of acid and basic character of base are neutralized to each other, and it produces the neutral substances. In normally acid-base reaction, they produce salt and waters. Each kinds of acid-base reaction, they generally produce salt and waters. And there are many examples of acid-base reactions, especially acid and base are reacting to each other to give salt and waters. For example, hydrochloric acid and potassium hydroxide to gives waters and potassium chloride. Hydrochloric acid and magnesium oxide are undergoes to take part in the chemical reactions to gives magnesium chloride and water. That's why each and every chemical reaction there is a salt and water are the major product are there in the chemical reaction. That's why normally you can remains in your mind or you can memorize to that the salt and water are forms through the combinations of acid and base. Salt and water are also known as the neutralization reaction. So they are the neutral substances. That's why acid-base chemical reactions are known as neutralization chemical reaction. In the chemical reactions in this screen, we can see AQ, AS, L, and G are mentioned in the chemical reaction. They are the phase of reactants and the product. That means AQ stands for aqueous phase, S stands for solid phase, L stands for liquid phase, and sometimes G is also mentioned in the chemical reaction. That stands for the gaseous states of reactants as well as the product. Thank you. This much today. How do you like? Please comment, share, and subscribe my channel. Thank you, everyone.